Yama, g'day everybody. Welcome to the round table. I'm Luna, and joining us this week on the round table we have Sharon, Jules, Donnie, Malia, and Naysay, and myself obviously. And this week's subject is understanding, grace, and courage. And just first, I'd like to welcome everybody. How you going, Sharon? And they're all muted up on me.
Hello, hello, hello.
How was your week?
Well, I spent a lot of time doing forgiveness based on our last show. I noticed peace, harmony, and forgiveness, and that was how my week was.
Cool.
I practiced.
Hey, good on you. Naysay, how was your week?
Sorry, I'm a little slow on the mute button there today. It was fantastic with a recovery that was subpar to usual. But I'll be here tonight with my radio voice. Thank you.
Oh, sounding good there, Naysay. And Jules, how was your week, love?
My week was fantastic.
Good.
Started out peaks and hills and valleys and ended up and towards the end of the week I'm astounded how revelation has happened to me. So fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Cool. Thank you for coming. And Donnie Bro, my echo mate, how was your week, my brother? It was good. Yeah, it was overwhelming. Okay, never mind. And Malia's a little busy tonight, so she'll be popping in and out. And I'm sure she had a good week. All right, let's get this kicked off. Understanding, grace, and courage. Understanding. Where are we? So, what is the process we use to understand things? And why is it the way we understand is different to someone else? And what is grace? And what does it look like? And how does it feel? And what power does grace actually have? And for courage. Do we all have courage? Is it something that we forge inside ourselves? Or is it something hidden deep within? Or is it something that we find when we need it? So I didn't have a lot of questions about these things because I want to delve into it straight away, and I think we'll come up with some questions at the end of the talk. So, okay, so understanding, we'll go with that. What's the process we use for understanding things? And we're not talking about the understanding that you get in the court, which means I stand under you. Because if you weren't aware of that, there's two dictionaries, and the one we're talking about is the one from the heart. So we'll go with understanding. How do we understand? Is it different? Do we actually understand the same way once we start to talk to each other? Is our life experiences forge the way we understanding? So let's get into that a bit. Who wants to go first?
I'll jump in and take a stab at it. Understanding the question you asked, what is understanding? The first thing that came to my mind was wisdom. And I remember we've done a previous episode on wisdom. I think wisdom is part of understanding with not understanding. And I thought of knowledge first, but what is knowledge but wisdom?
And understanding. Ooh, Jules has got the philosophical hat on tonight. Understanding. I looked it up in the dictionary, and this is what it said: sympathetic awareness, tolerant and forgiving. And that's because you hear a lot of people, you don't understand me. Are they really saying, you're not sympathetic towards me and I need more tolerance and you need to forgive me? Is that what they're really saying? Or are they actually saying, you don't think like me, you don't feel like me, how do you understand me? It's a tricky thing. And I feel the word understanding actually isn't deep enough to speak of what understanding is. I wish Polly was here because he'd have some good spins on this word. So, anyone else want to say their 2 cents?
I'd like to step in. So one of the things I think about understanding is it takes life and experience. It's been my experience. It's been my experience. It takes life experience to give understanding, to practice understanding, to be understanding to somebody else. I think if you haven't gone through certain experiences, you can try. It's like when you go to a funeral, unless you've really walked through that process of losing someone really close to you, it's really difficult to say the right things at the right time and to be understanding if you haven't gone through it. Like once you lose someone that's really been close to you, I almost feel like you have the right now to say things to somebody that you wouldn't have if you hadn't gone through that. And I think that's true about different pieces of life. And I also think that you're able to be a better listener if you've actually walked through it. Because you have this knowledge within yourself. And people can feel that compassion from you, that real compassion. I think it's about being a listener and not a talker. True understanding.
So life experience. So virtually the more someone's gone through and different things, the more understanding they have for other people.
Yeah, I think so. I don't see how it's been, and that's been my experience in life. That the more that I've gone through, the better listener I can be, and the less that I need to say it. And I think when we're listening to somebody and they're going through a tremendous amount of pain for something, you can be there at such a different level if you've actually gone through it yourself. I think the other thing that's hard for people is sometimes listening to people's deep pain is too hard. And I think it's again how much can you jump into the pool with them and be with them? Different levels.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, because you could get triggered from your own experience.
Yeah.
When people say this word, I'm trying to understand, to me that says they're trying to find things in themselves that match up to that person's, to what's happened to that person, so they can forge a bridge of the same experience. There's a point where you never went through the same experience, but you kind of understand what the person's going through. I don't know how that works, but it kind of does. I suppose it'd be a similar situation that you went through. How do you think the word understanding come around? Like you're talking to somebody and you go, no, I can feel what you're feeling. So you're sympathetic awareness to them, and you're tolerant, you're listening and forgiving. Who come up with the word that goes, oh, we'll call that understanding? Like when you look at it, it's got different facets. Like you said, Sharon, listening, and what the dictionary says, sympathetic awareness, tolerance. So the different facets of it, someone's had to sit there and go, oh, I'm going to call it understanding. When you think it'd be more like standing with you or something.
I like to refer to Jordan Maxwell when I heard him explain about understanding. So it from his perspective, and I'm probably butchering it, but I'll do my best. So you're standing. In order to be in good standing, you have to be secure on your foundation. And so, like in building, if you're going to build something, you have to check the foundation and make sure that the foundation is secure in itself. So then individuals will go under the foundation and they'll check out the foundation and say, okay, this foundation is structurally sound and it's able to take such weight upon it. Like when you're building a house, You have to go under the floor, under the foundation, to make sure that it can maintain all the parameters of having either a second floor, a third floor, or 100-foot skyscraper. Because if the foundation is not secure, then the entirety of the building can collapse. And so when we have understanding, as you were sharing earlier, to be able to find the balance between empathy and sympathy in one's own experiences, so that when somebody shares that you or someone hopefully has gone through a similar or parallel experience, that can help with guidance and be like, I understand, because I have empathy, sympathy, because I went through almost the same thing. Of course, it's challenging to be specifically an absolute in your understanding, because we are all so individually different, but that whole thing about like testing the foundation of oneself in order to make that assessment, and you brought up earlier too, Luna, which I always get an enjoyment, because that's what Jordan Maxwell would talk about in the legalese or the legal terminology in the courtroom, or even in that echinacea, where a police officer will read you your rights, and then he'll say, do you understand these rights that I have shared? And when you acknowledge, yes, I understand, you then therefore give your position that you are beneath the police officer's foundation, and thus you just give your authority that you are under, in good standing, the authority established in the circumstances.
Thank you, Nicey.
I kind of wonder, Luna, if it's one of those words that doesn't necessarily translate. And I did notice something that these three words have in common is that, from my perspective, these were three words that have not been hijacked as much as some of the other ones that we've discussed, which has been, to me, one of the greatest gifts of our conversations, is realizing how many of our words have been hijacked. I'm grateful for that, because understanding, grace, and courage, I would imagine the woke crowd would not want anything to do with any of these words, because they probably don't even understand what they are. Because I don't see any of them using these or showing examples. I don't see grace or courage coming from them, and I don't see any understanding, because in my mind, they're not capable of listening. They're only capable of talking and yakking at us. It's all about at us, One of the I did take some notes: reserving judgment, showing compassion, sensitive, having insight or good judgment, and being sympathetic, and it's a spiritual word. I really like the fact that I think it's definite. All three of these are spiritual words. These are all
I would
words.
agree. I feel like they're all and they're interconnected as well.
Yeah. Yes, Jules. Go ahead. I was thinking about your sweetie that you love, that's all on your wall. Your hero. What's her face?
Zena.
Lucy Lawless. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Lawless, yeah, Zena.
I meant Jules. So Lucy Lawless. Okay. when I think of her character, I think of understanding, I think of grace, and I think of courage.
And I believe that's why I am so compelled and drawn to that show. Because we're all warriors, and everybody should be creative or courageous, or it's all within us. I mean, it's there every day with the stuff that we're being thrown at, the tyranny, the enforcements, the lockdown. I mean, we conquer that every day. We are warriors, and it takes courage to do something. And the understanding comes when you make peace within yourself, acknowledge your faults, your flaws, do your best that you can, and fight not for war, but for those around you and those that you cherish and love.
You know, the dictionary says that grace is smoothness and elegance of movement, which a warrior would have when they were in battle. Courteous, goodwill, and honour, which a warrior would have. A good warrior would have that. And courage is the ability to do something frightening, or moral and mental strength. There are also traits of a good warrior. You're right, so right. And these words, understanding, grace and courage, these are the things that I've been calling upon trying to get through this madness. And because I don't want to judge anybody for their decisions or their actions at the moment, because everything's so crazy. I don't blame someone for flipping out on one day and having a bad hair day and maybe saying stuff they shouldn't, or being cranky or crying or just not being there, a bit zoomed out and not present. I'll forgive them if we're using words from last week. That's something else I noticed when I chose these words for this week. They're actually knitted into last week's words. But
Tommy had mentioned it in chat that balance is akin to understanding.
Yep. I think if we were all mindful when we go out in public and be graceful, have courage, and have understanding for others at the moment, it'd make our world a lot easier. It'd make their world a lot easier too, to have someone being like that to them. Grace is a funny thing, because when you say the word grace, if you look at a big burly man, it actually doesn't fit. It's like putting a lace skirt on him. That's how it looks, right? Because, how often do we associate a big, tough man with grace? Not very often, but I bet you that often they do carry it. But they don't wear it on the outside, I doubt. Some of them might. In this day and age, who knows? But what do you think about that? How powerful is grace, and how important do you think it is to us as human beings, or just beings, because some people don't like the word human? And what power do you think it has, and would we use it in our lives to benefit our lives more? Does anyone have an example of something?
Yeah, I there's a very close family friend person, and I know I've talked about this person because I moved to Austin. They had the brain tumor and everything, and the word grace to me is so special. It's because of this person, because all of the time that they went through the process, and they left the planet, transition, they were the most gracious people I've ever seen under fire. And their behavior and their actions redefined the word grace for me forever. When things get bad for me, or I feel like I can't cope or whatever, I think of this person. I think of what they went through. I dedicate this, my actions to them, because they showed true grace under fire. And this is a very special word, and they showed graciousness, and they were kind to everybody who helped them, no matter whether somebody screwed up or did a great job, didn't matter. Were always gracious. They were always kind, and that was the most impressive thing of it was, sometimes when I think back. And the other thing is, I think that Creator, the I Am, whatever you call it, will often give us a state of grace. Go for it, Jules.
Just gonna say that I'm thinking that acceptance is part of grace, like when you agree to disagree and you gracefully bow out and you've come to an acceptance with an outcome.
Yeah, that's an action. Gracefully bowing out. What about aging gracefully? Like we're starting to talk about it, actually has a like age gracefully, fall gracefully, leave gracefully.
Well, it is rather interesting when you look at grace and the different understanding one can have with being within grace, because in one aspect, grace, from a Christian perspective, is when you make an acknowledgement, like when you're eating something and you say grace, when you make an acknowledgement or an acceptance under God that you are in reverence of receiving a bounty in order to utilize it for your benefit. Also, you think of grace as in movement, a nice flow where there's not major disruption, where he moved gracefully. And then also there's grace where in financial standings, where somebody will give you a grace period of where you are not held accountable at the moment, distinguished between partners of a monetary value. And lastly, in nobility, grace is a term also utilized to describe a female within nobility as her grace, and then you throw all the different definitions into the experience of what is being discussed. So depending upon the individuals involved, the definition would have to have the discernment, because I believe this goes back to what I've shared about semantics. We have all gone through our own experiences, and more or less our experience dictionary, to where through our experiences we've come to the conclusion of what words mean. And sometimes we do that without even literally looking at an Oxford Dictionary or the American Heritage Dictionary or the Webster's Dictionary. And then you even get caught up in the semantics of what language is being utilized. So to find grace would definitely take active listening in order to come to a discernment of are we even on the same page of what we agree that this word means. As Sharon shared, it is unfortunate that today's younger entities do not take those precious moments to find out, not only the history of these words, but what the overall meaning are or is, because sometimes they're so caught up in their own experience, they won't take the opportunity to hear somebody else's definition or understanding of the word. because it's my definition or not. And one last thing, as Luna was saying earlier, in my experiences, when people are saying you don't understand me, more times than not, it's no, I understand you. You're just upset because I won't agree with you. And again, Dick Gregory, he once said that individuals don't hear what you mean, they hear the words you say.
Interesting. Gee, while you were saying that, all I could think was, do you have the courage to understand grace?
Do you think it takes courage to understand grace, Luna? Can you explain a little more on that?
Well, kinda, because when Naisei was talking, like, it takes courage. Yeah, I think so, because you've got to say to yourself, all right, I'm going to be as gracious as I can with this person, and then to do that, you have to say to yourself, sit down and listen to this person. Don't let your personal stuff get in the way, because they're trying to connect with you and say something. So you have to kind of put yourself aside and not react to any issue, because like we were saying before, usually when you connect with that person, you had something similar, that's why you can connect. But you have to be, you have to be courageous to have grace with that person. I think so. Unless it's a natural thing to you and your grace is showing under your petticoat and you wear it all the time. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And that was one of my questions. Is it something that we always have, or is it something that we find? Like we go throughout life, bang, and a situation comes up and we go, oh shit, this needs grace. And we jump inside and pull grace out to deal with the situation. Or does it walk with us? Or do we need to practice it? Do we need to bring it, instead of wearing it underneath as a petticoat, do we need to wear it as a coat? Because these are different times to what we've been through for the last hundreds of years. And our approach needs to be different. And I think it's time that we pulled these things out of ourselves and put them outside to show people what they are and have courage to do it, to be true in it. And to do that, obviously, we've got to do it ourselves. But, you know, people wouldn't be kind of listening here if they didn't have something like that already. Anyway, that's my...
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. In fact, I think all three of these words are words of service. Service we would give others. I mean, to me, if you think about courage, grace, and understanding, I mean, it does seem like you're right. These are times of us being in service to others.
I agree, but I don't mean to jump in. You can continue.
No, go ahead. I just wanted to throw that in there.
While we were talking about grace before it seems like we're jumping and from lily pad to lily pad. I just had this thought that grace can be beautiful, majestic, or enchanting, but grace can also be shamed by disgrace.
Yeah, there's a good one. You're filling in Polly's seat, man.
Need someone to do that.
Yeah, Polly would say
The
something.
seat is comfy.
Yeah, it's good. Disgrace. Well, what? That's kind of the opposite, or is it disconnected from grace? Let's look at that.
I believe it's both.
Disgrace. Well, it sounds like I had it and I lost it.
It's just something that I was just sitting here, and when grace is good and it feels right and it's natural and it's smooth moving, when you're walking, when you suddenly stumble, didn't see the stairs and you trip down the stairs, or when you're coming home from work and you actually literally trip up the stairs, that's not graceful at all. It's a disgrace. Because it's opposite of grace.
And I could chuck a funny in there and say, don't disgrace. Don't diss it, get it? Law.
And I'm trying to figure out how grace with understanding, how those two, I mean, you've come to the understanding that, yes, you're clumsy.
And
But it's a realization, so I think that realization definitely falls under understanding.
yeah, I can see where you're coming from there.
Well,
And you use your courage to get back up.
I can understand that.
And if anybody's looking, you just wave and say, hi, sorry, I tripped over my shoelace.
well, I think that when an individual reflects on their understanding when it comes to grace, metaphorically, it's like I'm using ballet for the example, where it's like, oh, well, if you look at Suzanne, she has a good understanding of her ability that she can be a ballet dancer because she has an inherent ability of functioning in the flow of being smooth and dancing. So she's graceful. But then an individual who may not have that same grace established in the parameters of ballet could be like, well, yeah, she may not be graceful in ballet, but when it comes to ecstatic dancing, she's incredible. Because then we get caught up in the standards that are put upon the experiencers in the definition of graceful. And then again, we get back to the whole discernment of, do we all understand the definition that we're going to use for grace? And then when we come to courage, when we have the courage to maintain our standing of the circumstance and use that to continue on gracefully to where we listen to one another and we actively listen and we don't immediately interrupt and be like, I don't believe that, you're stupid, or you don't understand me, instead of taking those moments to actively listen and then come to the conclusion to be graceful in the tactic of dealing with the situation, where all of a sudden the flow is going nice and smoothly in the experience that individuals are having, so that we don't get into disruption and become disgraceful to each other.
When I think of the word grace and I pull it out of myself, I feel this awareness, a certain awareness in my energy. And the more grace I pull out, the wider the energy goes. And it kind of seems, it's not a fast energy, it's slow and graceful. But it's kind of slow in the way that you can notice everything. There's time to be aware of everything, as opposed to a different kind of energy. That's just how I feel when I think about grace and feel grace in my body. I actually have a daughter. From the time she was a little kid and learning to walk and that, fallen over, she always fell with grace. And she would fall in a beautiful manner and land in a beautiful manner, and it didn't even look like it hurt. And we'd rush up there and go, oh, you're all right. But we observed the fact that when she tripped over or fell, it was like in slow motion. And in that moment, she had time to move her body in the appropriate way. So when she fell, it didn't hurt and it didn't bang. And we always said that.
I meant to do that.
But we always said that was one of her traits, is that she had that kind of grace in her body, and I suppose it was in her mind and spirit as well, but it's just something I observed. And I've observed a lot of old people, gracious older people. It makes them beautiful. Have you seen people like that?
That's well said. I think the other thing about grace, which is another piece of, or another view of this word, is people will say at the dinner table, someone say grace. It's a prayer. It's a short prayer, right?
Yeah. It's
Which is also interesting.
Yeah, I had a look at that too. A short prayer for thankfulness, saying grace. And I suppose when you're being gracious, graceful, or walking in grace, you are also being grateful, and you're walking in thankfulness. That's another word we can do another time, grateful. We're nearly at the end of our words, and we're going to watch how they all join together, which we're already experiencing for anyone that's been listening to the last 10 round tables. Actually, there's love. I can feel love in the grace as well. I don't know how that goes, but yeah, it works in there. It's a loving action. And maybe that's where the honour and goodwill comes in. Because you don't see mean people having grace. Do you see? Have you ever seen a mean AL person having grace? Are they graceful at handing over insults? I presume there would be someone out there that was graceful at doing that kind of thing.
And maybe that's another aspect of all three of these words, is that you have to be in almost a spiritual state, be any one of these. You can't be cranky, mean, or cruel, and be understanding, graceful, or courageous.
True.
These are definitely power words.
They are.
Great.
And I know grace is a very underused word and a very underused action, I feel, as a majority in the world. Yeah. So, all right, well, we'll move on to courage now. Ability to do something that's scary. I always kind of thought courage was the ability to do something you didn't really want to do, but you found the courage to do it anyway.
Courage motivates me. I'm speaking for myself, personal courage motivates me. I just ended a job and within 2 weeks have another job lined up. It took courage to do that. I was given the opportunity that at recovering, I could baby myself and I could milk it out and blah, and then I could spiral downward, get depressive. But it's no. It wasn't a setback. There was something to learn from it. Sometimes courage is literally just putting one foot in front of the other.
How come you think that some people would have more courage doing some things than others? Like, you know.
I think everybody has courage because they do things in their own certain ways. For me, like I'm saying, I feel courage is personal, and I just wonder if others don't have that personal connection with themselves or being open-minded. I think that they're programmed to have a lot of lack of courage.
And two things I got here. I'm looking at the word courage. It actually has the word rage in it. Courage. And what was the other thing I was going to say? Courage, and what was that other word? It's totally slipped. I should have wrote it down. See? hang on, it'll come back. Oh, well, I'll just forget about that for a minute and it'll hit me back in the head. So yeah, we'll go back to the courage has the word rage in it. Do you feel that to bring courage up sometimes you have to fire up a little bit? And push yourself and get a bit fiery? It's not like a placid word, is it? It doesn't seem like a placid word. Not like grace or understanding. It has a bit more sassiness to it. Because sometimes you have to pluck up the courage, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think about one of the things I learned when I was in one of the many classes I took was it taught us a lot. They talked a lot about fear and doubt. That the two most defeating feelings humans can feel is fear and doubt, right? And I think courage is one of the words that can jump start you out of fear and out of doubt because, like Jules said, it's an action word. I love the word and I use it a lot, Jules. I'm with you. That it is a motivator for me. That sometimes I'll look at the beginning of my day and that'll be one of the prayers I ask for is that today I have courage. Maybe it's just to get through the day, just to have the courage to show up, be the kind of person I want to be. And that just seems, for some reason, that seems like it's going to take a lot of courage. Maybe it's energy, maybe it's, forgiveness, maybe it's thoughtfulness, maybe it's something, but it does feel like it takes courage to get through the fear and doubt, or the tiredness, or whatever I'm feeling. So I agree with you. I think that's well said.
My pop culture mind automatically jumped to the Wizard of Oz. Again, it seems like we keep going back to the Wizard of Oz every now and then with these topics. But the Cowardly Lion, when he joined up with Dorothy, he went to go ask the wizard for courage.
Oh, that's right, you need to. I found that word bravery, courage and bravery. They kind of sound the same, but something in me says, no, they're a little different.
Yeah, I agree.
If I was king of the forest. Well, with courage within an individual, it is finding that ability to stand upon your beliefs, your feelings, your principles, in sharing that perspective. Because sometimes it takes courage, something within you, to stand up when the entire group is saying yes, and your perspective is no. That takes courage. Example, we can give, hundreds and thousands of examples of acts of courage where experience a burning house and you hear a scream in the house and someone witnessing the house burning finds it within themselves to go beyond that fear of, look, I'm going to run into a burning house and go and try to protect these individuals. So it's finding that within to motivate an individual to do something that is a little bit beyond the normalcy of one's own expectations.
So I was listening to Naysay and his infinite wisdom, and I noticed in chat that Connie had spelled out the word courage, CUOR, with rage separated. So I can see rage, I understand rage, so I wonder if there was a meaning to the word COUR. So did a quick little dive, and found out that cur means to run or happen, and it comes from ultimately from a Latin word. And my in my mind, it's like those powers that should not be. They know, I mean, to run or happen with rage.
Yeah, because it sounds like how you say, you can say co-rage, core rage, whatever. There's a
Yeah.
positive and negative to it, and it's if we either harness the rage in ourselves and use it for positive, which helps us to overcome, or
Yes.
if someone harnesses it for us, we actually lose it.
It's that duality. It's that balance.
Well,
Yeah.
in the syllabic, or looking at the etymology of the word cure, age. Age is more of like the preference, then rage is the suffix of it. I meant, because acquire, to a curator.
Yep.
If you look at that word cure, the COUR in itself stands, before adding the suffix of age.
Yeah, I get what you're
So
saying.
But it is interesting that
how my brain operates. Sometimes it doesn't. It makes sense here and there and everywhere, and sometimes I'm like, everybody has to connect my dots.
You know what comes to mind when I think of this word is the movie The Gladiator, and the scene where the gladiator is chained up and he faces the emperor. The emperor just says to him, "Why don't you die?" He just says to him, "I think, Emperor, you have been afraid your entire life." And so when I think about courage, I still think that is a word when you face fear. And one of my favorite sayings about courage isn't that you don't have fear, it's that you have fear and you face it anyway. You don't have to, there's no perfection needed to call on courage. In fact, we call on it to help us walk through it.
Your courage seems like raw energy, eh?
Yes, yes.
It seems to me like if you can say, "Oh, I was brave," but being brave, it sounded like it was smooth and polished. And then you go, "I had courage," and it's like something deeper and more wild that came out. Yeah, there definitely is a distance.
like I found the courage within myself,
Yes.
within the experience. Because if you think of it as, an energy flow, it's like, is this energy going to continue to flow, or is there the potential that fear is going to stop that flow, and then the individual will also in himself or herself, or itself, that all of a sudden they stop that flow of energy and be like, that's a burning building, I'm not going to run into it.
Yeah. Well, I'm just listening to it. Go. Sorry.
Go ahead, Luna.
No, you're right. I was just going to say something else, but keep going.
Because I'm beginning to wonder when we look out of ourselves and we see all of the events happening, are we looking at rage or are we really looking at fear? In other words, are we seeing the actions of people who are angry or the people who are afraid?
Feel like we're looking at them with fear.
Yeah.
In between.
Yeah. Yes. And if they're fearful, then that means that the stand we're all taking to be calmly walking through all this is the right stand. It is the right stance. We are using our own courage. Tony, you said it yourself a couple of minutes ago. This is not something. Well, this is not something I've walked through before, for sure. And I have to pull out all the stops that I possibly have in my arsenal to get through every day sometimes, because I don't know how to do this. I don't. And I don't always know. Like today, I felt like the total space cadet. I know I needed to do something, but I wasn't even clear what I needed to do. Luckily for me, I ran into my son. We could have a short chat, and he just made me laugh, and he kind of put it in perspective. It was such a blessing to have that conversation. That I didn't have to explain myself. He understands all the things that are going on. So, such a blessing to be able to say words that you need to say to somebody that's not going to go any further, and then you can just let go of that stuck energy, move forward.
Yeah, that's true. It's a good thing. Moments like that help us to find courage and grace and all that in ourselves, because we've scraped off all the unnecessary stuff. We've offloaded it, so these things can come out. And you're right, Sharon, we really do need to pull inside ourselves all these things. Because, 20 years ago, you wouldn't think about it. Most people wouldn't think, why do I need to understand grace and courage? Why would I need to look at truth and what it is? Why would I need to look at fear, Because it wasn't present in our faces back then, and now it is. And that's why I think it's like a spiritual war, because we've had to pull into our spirit and pull these things out just to get up in the morning and face whatever comes to us, which we never know. It could be a good day, a bad day.
Yes, I mean, I agree. They're all spiritual words.
And I had to chuck in before the song "Amazing Grace." It's my most favourite song of all time. And
Amazing Grace on bagpipes is even better.
Oh yes.
Yes, it is.
Definitely.
You think the founding fathers, and I don't mean to pull this into the USA, but it could be any founding fathers of any country. Our founding fathers feel the way we feel right now? Did they feel like they were facing what we're facing? That they took courageous stands of freedom in the face of the behemoth of insanity.
Yeah, I feel so. Here it would have been the Eureka Stockade, where everyone come together to stand together. They obviously had understanding because they stood together. They had courage. And they, I agree.
They could see what other people couldn't see, right? Not everybody stood up with them. They were a small percentage, actually, which reminds me of us.
It's funny. I said that to myself.
Right?
Yeah, I said that to myself today. I feel like the minority of the minority.
Definitely.
And it's funny because the small things, as we know, because understanding and courage and grace, they're really tiny things. They're not like they're big elephants or big dinosaurs that romp around all in our lives all day. They're very silent and small, and they're like the little flower that grows out the back, and you get up one day and go, oh, look, there's a flower in the backyard. But they're so actually very important and powerful to us. I don't think we've ever had to need them so much. And I think in the past, yes, they would have needed them. And they kind of got forgotten over time, and it's time to resurrect them all. And we know that the English language has tricked us for a long time, and if anyone knows anything about other languages, there's bits and pieces of everything in the English language. And you really couldn't call it English, and it's more like a collage. You've gone around taken stuff from everybody's yard and made a picture, and that's English. So talking about these things I think is important too, so we can get a better foundation of how we understand the words within ourselves and act upon them. And there's one thing I've always said in my life is, in the past, when gentlemen were gentlemen and women were gracious, they had a conversation and you'd know exactly where you stood. You'd know exactly what was going on and how that person thought and felt, and it wouldn't take a lot of words. We've lost that in our slang and all that, and not paying attention to the simple words like understanding and courage. We've lost that directness of our speech. Would you agree?
Yes, I think, again, something that I've gotten out of our talks, our roundtable talks, is how much of the language I'm no longer using. I've lost access because I'm choosing not to use the words that have been hijacked. I was thinking about that the other day. It's like I refuse to use them, and I didn't even realize I was doing that. Luckily for us and for me, these words have not been hijacked, because it just goes right over the woke people's heads, in my opinion. And so we get to bring that, you're right, we get to bring them in. We need to bring life, breathe life into them, and certainly bring them into our own reality and show up in understanding and grace and courage, right? When we show up, it's something that you feel from us. Because when I ask for courage, I ask for it to be a part of my aura. Like, I want the courage to be, I want people to sense there's courage, sense there's grace, sense the words that I feel that day. It's like that's what I want people to see or feel or hear when I speak. And that's what I was talking to my son today. I said, I'm going through this thing at work that I've already gone through before. I said, obviously I missed the lesson the first time, so now I get to do it again. I said, maybe I need to show up as somebody who is comfortable where I'm at versus worrying about what other people think or proving myself. I don't have to do that. I just can show up. But I bring in these words. Go ahead, Jules.
Well, personally, for me, and I'm speaking for myself because it's completely, once all the labels and everything are dropped and you identify as nothing, you're just simply Jules. Then you meet the people that you meet, but as no labels, that's where, for me, my personal courage comes in. Because I know that people are going to judge me, and I just choose not to engage with them. And by being spiritual like that, it's just this trio of words, they flow together, they support one another.
I think so too. And words do have power. And I think if once you understand a word, and how it means to you, because given everyone speaks different languages and the way we speak and all, when we actually get down to the nitty-gritty of the word like we have been over the weeks, when you speak it and you know it, it goes in your energy, and I think people can see it. Well, I know people can see it. But so if you choose for the next week, I'm going to understand grace and walk in it and be aware of it, by the end of that week, people will notice that in your energy. You won't have to do anything. You don't have to prove, like Sharon said, and Jules, you don't have to prove. You just do. Just do it and be it.
That's what I was getting at. Just do it.
Yeah. And with courage, I think courage presents itself. Situations in your life will come up. You can't go out, you can go out and be graceful to people, but courage will come to you, and a situation will come to you, and then you'll need to apply courage to it. That's it's not an all the time thing. But grace and understanding are like an everyday thing. Even though you carry courage, you could just carry it, but you wouldn't necessarily use it all the time. Does that make sense? And I got a question too. Where in nature and animals do you think they have understanding, grace and courage? How would we see it in there? Or do you think because of the way they live, they don't need it? I haven't looked really into this because I just love nature. I don't ask questions of it. I take it for what it is. But looking at it now, can an animal be courageous, graceful and understanding?
Well, I mean, without going deep into it, because I'm still like in awe of the question. I think some animals do have courage. What about like the woodpile that has a mouse buried underneath the brush, and along comes the hawk? My mouse is looking for food. The hawk's looking for food. But if you were that mouse, it would take courage to get out and get that knowing that you could be eaten.
Yeah, true. I've seen actual instances where one species has saved another species. Actually, there's a lot of that. It's just that people didn't notice it. They're not there when it happens. But they actually care for each other. So
Yeah.
that's a courageous act in itself, is caring. And I presume, I know some species are more loving than others, so then perhaps they obtain more grace and courage and understanding. It depends. I suppose it's like us. I've always said they're not really much different to us. They feel and think and all that too. They just haven't got fingers and arms like us to do stuff. So, okay, so anyone want to add anything else? Because we haven't got our corner seat here, so the round table's a bit smooth today.
I think, I want to say again, I think that these roundtables have turned into something so special that I'm able to work on these things consciously and help integrate them into my life. And that's been really powerful. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to focus on that instead of the other things I could possibly focus on. So I'm really grateful we're able to do this.
And I as well. I mean, these topics these three go together, and they're going to stand out for me because these are words that I don't feel are hijacked, and it's no coincidence that they're spiritual words.
No, I think they're very important now. I brought them up to look at. It's kind of like they're the fuel that Creator gave us to get through all this. And we should talk about it more because we tend to forget things like that in our daily lives. And they are important, and we should speak the important things. So anyone else want to round it off before we go? Anyone? No? Like I said, it's a smooth table today. No. Yeah. Anyway, all right then. We'll call it an evening. And what can I say? Love to you on this day. Hope you walk in grace and beauty and courage and understanding. And I hope this has helped everyone in some way to face the days that we are facing. And I'd like to thank everyone for listening, and I'd like to thank Sharon, Jules, Donnie, Malia and Naysay for participating today. So until next week, everyone, have a good week. I hope it's full of love.
Yalu.
Yalu.
Hello, you too.
Yalu.